Good unspecified time period. My name is Richard, like the plant chart.
I don't know where you're going with that, but this is Deep Space and Dragons, presented by Karl and Richard, because we're alphabetical this week. Just like last week, but, still.
I was kind of hoping when I'm like Richard like the chart, you'd be like Karl like the special K or something. I don't know what you were going to do, but I set you up for a beautiful improv moment, and you squandered it.
I squandered it? I don't know. Maybe I squandered with the alphabeticalness.
Well, maybe not squandered. Like, it's more like you picked up on it semi-professionally, and I'm like, oh, this is as expected. It's kind of like, to spoil the newest chapter of JJK in this random episode not about JJK being like, ooh, plot twist, I used my copy ability to copy the brain switch ability to switch brains with the dead body that was brought back by the nurse to then have him punch through my infinity with his domain extension. I'm like, yeah, you are doing all these things, that is correct. It doesn't make them interesting, the fact that you're doing them.
Ouch. I wish I was interesting.
Well, you are more interesting than the new chapter of JJK. But I digress. What's new in the Karlverse?
My girlfriend, she was out having lunch with her mom, and her mom's like, okay, we gotta go to Pet Value to get some like pet supplies. And while they were there, my girlfriend sees this little kitty cat that's up for adoption.
Yes.
And long story short, we adopted this kitty cat.
Correct.
She's a 6-year-old calico, which apparently is not quite senior, according to the bags of cat food. Senior is 7+.
Looking at you, Mr. Miko.
Old man Miko.
Old man Miko yelling at kids to stay off his lawn.
But as I choke on nothing.
Did you learn you had a cat allergy in this exchange?
No. I mean, it's kind of uninteresting. I mean, we got the cat mostly because, like, I have a weird work schedule, and so a lot of evenings my girlfriend spends home alone, and so for like anxiety and mental health, it's like, yeah, having a cute, affectionate pet is very, very helpful for self-care.
Yeah. Also, cats are awesome. Like, admittedly, given any opportunity where I can advise someone pro-cat or anti-cat, unless that someone is just like a bad person, I'm going to be pro-cat.
Well, I mean, I do have lots of worries about, like, most of the people that I know, they don't change the litter regularly enough, or like sweep and mop, or like it's just, I don't know very many responsible adults. And I don't want to be a hypocrite, but and point out that people aren't doing these things and then not do them myself. But without my girlfriend, I don't think I would be a very responsible cat owner.
I see. Where cats are great. That's just my entire stance. But fair enough. It is. It's good. It's good mental health to be like, okay, would I be good at this thing? Should I take this other animal on and take care of it when I'm not able? No. That is a correct way to handle that. Hypothetical hats on, then off to you, sir.
Well, I mean, then, like I said, with my girlfriend's help, I think we will be able to maintain a clean and healthy environment for the cat, which will also mean the environment is clean and healthy for us too. So
yeah,
it's a win-win.
Fair and balanced.
So what's new with you there?
Well, I can finally mention that my story is in the first-person section of the Globe and Mail. So if any of our listeners want to read my writing that is in the Globe and Mail, it is called. The story goes by Bowling, Booze, and Chicken Wings. Dad Sendoff was as fun as he was. They tweaked the title slightly, but I consented to that. My original title was...
the titles?
Yeah, they're like, this would work better for a headline. And I'm like, that's like 8% less sassy than me. Because I absolutely used a synonym for fun that could have been said more condescendingly. But I digress. It's out there. People can give it a read. Makes me happy. And between that, schoolwork, working my novel, playing far too much Octopath Traveler 2 when I had a day off. That's pretty much my life. I am not as mysterious as I wish I was.
Well, I mean, sometimes it's good to not be mysterious.
It's like I'm simultaneously the most busy I've ever been, but like it's all desk busy. So it's like watching a writer, it turns out, because we don't live in the era of cheap booze and shotguns, is really not that interesting. Like, there is no me at the jazz bar as a dark-hearted dame leads me into a spiral of no good. Can't happen in this economy. I actually cannot fathom when people are like, oh, I just went to the coffee shop to write. I'm like, don't you need 3 monitors? Where did you have your Gundam fax open? Like, how can you write without 3 screens? Where's your soft magic system going? Nowhere?
It's all in their head.
Like, you don't have a single spreadsheet open for pacing your story. Okay, good luck. Like, it's funny because they like to talk in my program where you have, like, your planners and your plotters. And I'm neither and both. Because I can just vomit a story for countless words on a paper and make it up. But then I'm making my life harder. So instead, I like have all these spreadsheets open that I then proceed to ignore and then use during the editing phase.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like my notes would only make sense to me, or like Hannibal Lecter on meth.
Wow.
And I'm fine with that.
I mean, doesn't that mean that you could safely open all your notes at a coffee shop?
Yes and no. There isn't the processing power on my laptop. And not only that, but like I like to put on specific soundtracks while I'm writing certain action scenes.
Ooh.
And it's like a lot of scenes will be like I will pick a piece of lyric-free music from like a game or mostly a game remix or something along those lines to fit the mood of the scene. Like I'm like, all right, this calls for a lo-fi remix of the Mega Man 03 Snow soundtrack for me to write this scene. And just not having access to my full, like, range of equipment is really hamstringing myself.
Huh.
But I did write a chapter of my book in class while toning out class one time, so maybe there's some flexibility here. But also the ADHD. If there's other human beings around me, much like a corgi, I'm going to be distracted.
Fair enough.
Like, there's a reason I have to lock Miko out while I'm writing, because I get so focused that when he politely puts his paw on my leg, I scream and jump like 10 feet. So my passive perception's like an 8 already. It gets cut in half when I'm focusing. Which means if you roll a 4 on a 20-sided dice to sneak up on me, you will succeed while I'm writing.
Wow, I am only catching like snippets here and there. Started with people, ended with a rolling a d20. I don't really know what happened there.
Oh, I gave a monologue about my passive perception that because the recording's on my end, it picked up, and because it's not on your end, you didn't have to hear.
Yeah, okay.
Alright, but let's get into tonight's topic. Vampires. So I'm going to start with the obvious question. Yeah. Do you want to be vampires with me?
Well, I mean... Yeah, I mean, it could be fun.
It wasn't a no, but I think I have to think about it.
What? Cutting in and out audio aside, I don't know if I could just go around murdering people, at least for the first, like, decade. That'd be pretty tough.
So my first thought, my classic vampire thought is, you work at a blood bank and you just swipe packets of blood, like... Especially the What We Do in the Shadows vampires, where you can just go up and straight up hypnotize people for blood packets.
I mean, that's true. They definitely can just hypnotize people willy-nilly.
And also, as dark as this sounds, we live in such a nihilistic dystopia, I could probably just put out a Craigslist ad for Who Wants to Die. Note, send up here and I will just kill you. That's the entire exchange. And I'd probably get a person a week. Like, people who just sign up to die to a vampire would be surprisingly frequent.
That is probably true.
So, I'm going to give a mini tangent here before we, like, deep dive into What We Do in the Shadows. Because this mini tangent I was thinking about on the bus ride home today while the air was thick like chowder. Okay. So, the new chapter of Chainsaw Man, the last 2 chapters, had a lot of controversy on the internet.
Okay.
Things about, like, full-on discourse about whether or not it's sexual consent to have the demon inside your body hook up with the person you've hooked up with before. People being like, I used to support you, but you've horrified me with this disgusting display. And I was thinking about it. So, nothing that happened in those chapters, which was two young adults being physically awkward in what's probably one of the more realistic depictions of this I've seen in manga, because it was gross and unflattering, much like adult interactions are.
Mm-hmm.
So in my lit class, no one would have even batted an eye, right? From that particular chapter. Right. In a lit class or a stage play, an awkward accidental handjob, disclaimer, our show will talk about an accidental handjob in a work of fiction, would not bat an eye to the literary community, but the readers of Shonen Jumps lost their mind. What we do in the shadows in any given 10-minute stretch breaks anything questionable that Chainsaw Man has done in its entire runtime. But the audience is trained differently. Because I feel like that's happened at least 30 times, like that exact moment, somewhere in what we do in the shadows.
I mean, I don't know about that exact moment, but there are definitely some very...
risque worse than that.
Yeah.
The entire character of Laszlo puts Denji to shame.
Well, because Denji is all about consent.
Laszlo is not.
Yeah, no.
Laszlo's busy being an icon. So before we deep dive too far, how far did you get in the show? And tell me Karl's first impressions. Karl's first impressions. This is now a segment.
Oh, well, see, my first impressions, which, I mean, I watched all 5 seasons. Apparently, according to the Screen Rant, there is going to be another season. Maybe it's currently airing, maybe it's currently being produced, I don't know.
If it was
but it'll be the final season.
That I was aware of. Note, spoilers for what we do in the shadows. So pause this episode, watch 6 seasons of TV, come back. It's British seasons, it's not too bad.
Well, I mean, you only have to watch 5 because the 6th season is not out for streaming yet.
Nope. Much to my chagrin.
Anyways, so a little side tangent.
On our show,
the mockumentary format. The most famous example that I can think of, three most famous examples I can think of besides what we do in the shadows, are The Office,
yep,
Parks and Recs,
yep,
and Trailer Park Boys.
I wouldn't have had Trailer Park Boys as my third one, but it is. And Arrested Development isn't a mockumentary, but it's very close.
But so, all four of these shows have something in common, and that is a delusional, emotionally unintelligent, socially unaware character. Most often, the main character.
Yes.
And for The Office was the worst. The character was so delusional, but so confident yet incompetent. Like the first episode was funny. The second episode, I felt bad for them because they were just so bad at life. The third episode, I became angry that the character was never going to get better because that's for the sake of the show, for the sake of the joke, they just can't improve.
You know, the funniest part is I actually like Steve Carell in Space Force.
But then by the fourth episode of The Office, I just decided the show wasn't for me. I couldn't get into it because the character was so... I just don't see anything ending well for a character that delusional in any sort of position of power. Like, I see them becoming either a victim or the perpetrator of domestic abuse or just ending up jobless or homeless, or I really don't see any actual funny punchline out of character like that, and it just breaks my suspension of disbelief that they continue
to be employed. So So I've given this rant a few times, and I think I gave it on our villain episode actually, where when you make a character so cartoonishly evil that it doesn't make sense that they'd have minions or henchmen or function as a member of society. Like, the League of Villains in My Hero Academia always broke me for that one, where it's like, yeah, we'll back the crazy person who murders their sidekicks, who's a 12-year-old who plays Game Boy. I'm like, no one would stay in that group past the first 10 minutes. The moment he looked you dead in the eyes and went like, it's like a game and I'm going to destroy All Might, I'd be like, nah, I'm out. There's no plan here.
But
It's just chaos that you just keep getting increasingly lucky somehow.
but so Steve Carell's character, I already forgot his name.
Michael Scott.
Yeah, okay. He broke my suspension of disbelief. That the mockumentary style is supposed to be like you're catching real people, unscripted, and like this is actually their lives. And it broke my suspension of disbelief that he could actually be a real person. And then the character archetype just kind of made me upset.
So what's really funny to like loop around to Arrested Development a bit, it's close to being a mockumentary. It doesn't have the fake camera crew. And mockumentaries are funny because I like them better when the camera crew's explicitly acknowledged. So The Office, one of the things that always bugged me about it is no one acknowledged there was a camera crew there, but they filmed it like a camera crew was there. So it's like they did the cutaways like it was a documentary, but none of the characters were aware they were on a documentary that was there every day of their lives.
Right.
And Parks and Rec, I feel like they just dropped the mockumentary after season 1. Like they gave up on that part. But what we do in the shadows was actually consistent about it to the point where camera crew can get injured and die and have names. And then characters like, why is there a camera crew? And I love that. I love that they leaned into the mockumentary to the point where some of these other ones are like, yeah, no, I understand a few episodes, like, oh yeah, it's a documentary, so we're ignoring the cameras. But there's some scenes that's like, there's no way your camera crew would have been there for that. You broke your framing device, brah.
But so Parks and Rec, I didn't actually watch any more than season 1. I was able to get further into Parks and Rec than I did into The Office.
The show gets so much better season 2, and I'm not quite sure why. It's like there's a big energy change. They might have, like I said, it feels like they dropped or made less pronounced the mockumentary format, and it deeply helped them. Maybe. I could just be delusional. There might not be a Karl.
The main character of that series, the female lead, she's
Leslie
a little bit more grounded. Yeah, so she's a little bit more grounded than Steve Carell's character, and the setting is a lot more dynamic and interesting. But by the end of the first season, again, maybe it's because of that mockumentary style. I couldn't. Her character broke my suspension of disbelief, and I was just like, I'm just not interested enough to bother trying to see whether or not it gets better because it just didn't get me.
On the plus side, you're not sexist in this development because the straight white male character also broke you.
Broke me faster than the female character for sure.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, Parks and Rec is definitely a step up from The Office in terms of writing and humor.
Oh man, like out of all the controversial takes we've had on here, that one might get us in danger.
Well, so many people like The Office for sure. I was just like I say, I couldn't get into it. I thought it was awful.
I couldn't get into it either, to be fair.
And then, what we do in the shadows sets itself apart from those two. It does have the delusional, socially unaware, emotionally unintelligent characters. But they're not the main character. The main character is Guillermo, the familiar.
Mm-hmm. They kind of inverted it. They made every character who's not the main character the oddball character. It's like an interesting approach they had. So I will say, what we do in the shadows, it's funny because they gave it a really high age rating, but they did something I always love in a comedy that I don't see enough of. Continuity is gold in that show. It has Arrested Development level of commitment to the bit.
It definitely does commit to bits quite heavily. But I will say, so then the archetype characters that I dislike, it actually makes sense for them to be that way, because they're vampires that have been alive for hundreds of years that have been completely uninterested in the comings and goings of humanity. So their lack of social awareness, it makes sense.
So what's funny is there's a line they use in the last season for my favorite character, the Guide. The Guide's my favorite character. I can explain later. Where she's like, wait, so if you guys secretly said a bunch of nice things because they literally like rolled the footage because they're aware they're on a show?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it was just footage of them nice talking someone behind their back, and they're like, then why are you guys so mean? It's like, we're vampires! Of course we're mean! And I'm like, that encapsulated the show so much. It's like, yeah, no, we put on airs to be mean. We're vampires. It's what we do.
And then the punchline to that joke is they were actually talking up the guy to get Colin Robinson to date her.
Yep.
But even still, with Guillermo being the main character, with the terrible archetype characters having sensible reason to be that way, I almost gave up on season one, by the end of season one, because I felt so bad for Guillermo. I mean, he's still a little bit of a delusional character because he just, like...
loves his job. Did you get too deep? Did you get too close to the sun on that one?
He's so naively optimistic, and yet consistently proven that his optimism and faith are misplaced. And I just feel so bad for how poorly they treat him. But because the setting is better, because the characters are more sensible, and because the main character is not this terrible character that I dislike, I gave season 2 a try, and it definitely it managed to pivot in a very interesting way that kept me interested right to the end.
So, for context, to give a bit about background about these characters in the show we've been talking about for like 20 minutes now. So our core cast, we have Guillermo, the familiar, who is promised that someday he'll be made a vampire. And the thing is, there's no evidence to show that they weren't actually intending to someday actually, in fact, make him a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because it's like, well, why would anyone put up with this much bullshit? It's like, then we get full episodes of how cool it actually is to be a vampire. Like, the endgame goal of, oh, I can fly, turn into a bat, hypnotize people, is pretty great. Immortality. Like, there's a lot of upside to that quest.
Yeah.
But I think what made the show, because I agree that I wouldn't have stuck with it nearly as hard, is if it was just the Dunk on Guillermo show for 5 seasons. Because they decided to, like, you know what? Let's make him the most badass character on this show. They, like, got around to, like, okay, it's time now. So then we have Laszlo, who's just Matt Berry playing the character. Laszlo's great, because he's so indifferent to the plot of the show. He's just off living his absolute best life.
I initially, so by the end of the series, Laszlo's character really grew on me, mostly because it was season 3 where he decides to be friends with Colin Robinson, the energy vampire, because he
that arc made him for me too.
And because he realizes that Colin Robinson is going to die, so he decides to show Colin Robinson the time of his life.
And then ends up raising him as his son.
Yeah, it was because
such a good
vampires
arc.
Apparently just get reborn every 100 years.
There's no reason not to. That was just fair game. But also, I like the main trio. He's like pretty consistently the most empathetic character to other people's plights.
Yeah.
And then, Nandor, my beloved. Nandor has done nothing wrong. He just wants things to be nice and clean and orderly. Hashtag Nandor's done nothing wrong. He's a pure, perfect angel, and I will take none of this disrespect.
Well, see, Nandor's character is the Steve Carell and I feel bad. Maybe I am a sexist monster, but I don't remember the actress's name from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I don't either. I can't bail myself out. I dug myself such a grave on that one. Who plays Leslie? Nope.
But Nandor is that character archetype.
Amy Poehler? Amy Power? Anywho, please continue.
And almost to the so at the very end, in the last episode, Guillermo needs his glasses again, and Nandor has a pair of Guillermo's glasses, and I just don't believe that. Nandor would not have those glasses. He just wouldn't.
He would. Nandor has spent that entire show caring about Guillermo a lot. So let's go back to the first episode where he makes him a glitter painting of the two of them. So here's okay. Nandor's arc to put Nandor in context. Nandor knows Guillermo wants to be a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And is his best friend.
Yeah.
He also knows Guillermo is a softie, and if he becomes a vampire, he will starve to death. His entire 6-season-long arc was to try and see if he could build up Guillermo to have the will to be a vampire. So almost everything he does is like, whenever he teases Guillermo, he's trying to like get Guillermo to stand up for himself. And if he does, he rewards him. Like when he literally is like in a fight pit, like, come on, fight me, come on. Because he knew that his perfect sunshine husband needed to learn to kill to be a vampire. So like there's just a lot of moments like where he takes him flying, takes him golfing, listens to him. Like, I don't know. I think he legitimately was like, I really want to mentor him into being a vampire. But he's got to change if he wants to be a vampire because you can't be a vegan vampire. There's a lot of... Because every time Nandor and Guillermo had a moment, when I was doing my watch along with my friend, we would put a ship emoji or a ship gif.
Okay.
And there is a lot of wholesome moments between the two of them over the runtime of that show. So I fully believe, because as we mentioned earlier, that vampires just choose to be a dick because they're vampires. It's what they do. He absolutely knew in advance this was how it was going to play out, had 2 backup plans to bail him out, totally would have had the glasses on him, because he has cared this entire time. I stand by it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. He's just like some of those wholesome moments where he's like, okay, like Nandor talks to the camera and he's like, okay, I need to try what they call listening to him. And then he goes in there and he like starts listening and then just like, and I'm done, and just like walks away, and it's like doesn't give Guillermo any of the emotional support that Guillermo wants.
And ever. I do think it comes from a place of trying to toughen him up to be a vampire, and it's toxic and terrible, and I love it. Because, like, the moments where he's, like, respects Guillermo most is when Guillermo's literally, like, about to kill him. And I really enjoyed the one moment, though. It's like, I let you live. He's like, oh? It's like, okay, now that's how you get Nandor's respect, is you have to walk up and punch him in the face. That's how it works.
The vampire killer arc being season 2 was definitely my favorite. I really liked the vampire killer.
I also really enjoyed
the
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, I really also enjoyed I have to hide that I cheated on my master arc, because that was just so cheesy. And I was like, I was so bummed though that they walked that back, because that was such a like bold direction to take a show at that point. I'm like, yes, this is a great season 5 twist. Because the season 4 twist of Baby Colin Robinson was amazing, but the season 5 twist of I just gave a guy a duffel bag of cash at a gas station to fulfill my dream. When the previous season is like, we will tour across my homeland, and when we reach the coast, then you will have earned this. It's like, oh man, you cheated on him and got a mediocre experience. Like, that was the punishment. It's like, oh man, you totally... You cheated on him, and now you just get to feel terrible and be a crappy vampire, and you kind of had it coming. For not putting trust in this person who does not deserve it in any way, shape, or form.
He does not deserve trust.
No. You know what one of my favorite moments
But,
of... Oh, go ahead.
like I say, well, it's like I say, Nandor has a reason to be terrible, because like to him, the 10-year anniversary is like a blink,
A
blink and you
6-month
miss it
anniversary
him.
for a lot of people. Because I do
Yeah,
believe a
like, he
macaroni
was, like,
painting is a good 6-month anniversary present.
I mean, he thought it was a 2-year anniversary, but nonetheless, Guillermo was very disappointed at the end of episode 1 when he got the glitter painting instead.
But I will say, like, for my argument that Nandor cared the whole time, I'm going to just put this out there. Yeah, being made into a vampire is a sweet gift. I can count on less than 2 hands the number of glitter portraits I've received in my life.
Ooh, challenge accepted.
That is just a quality, thought-filled gift right then and there. You know, like, he had to go to the store, he had to get the glitter. Like, there's steps that were involved here.
Yeah, he had to get the creepy paper.
The creepy paper. But yeah, like, so what we did in the shadows, I didn't really talk about Nadia much, but I really enjoyed 3 of her arcs. I enjoyed her owning the nightclub and everyone stealing from it.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed her getting really drunk on drunk blood and just having a relapse.
Wasn't that the same arc?
Yes, but all of that concludes with the there was no curse arc, which is just so good. She goes through a whole season trying to cure a curse to be like, there wasn't a curse, you just are a jerk. Your life fell to pieces because you suck. Well, it's like, that was the actual moral of the story.
That there was no curse arc is a pretty good one, but not just the same terrible, crappy person at the end as she is at the beginning. I really, like I said, Laszlo's character seemed like it had a lot of development.
He did seem to go through an arc. Colin Robertson was an interesting arc.
He's just such a fantastic character who gets less screen time than the other vampires.
I think that's important,
his screen
though.
time is more valuable.
Yeah, like I think he wouldn't work if he had more screen time.
The screen time he has is more poignant because he gets less of it.
Mm.
So I mean, and as a character, it's just he's, in his own words, because he's an energy vampire, so he drains people's energy instead of draining their blood, and he does this by boring them. Mm-hmm. But in his own words, he doesn't live to feed; he feeds to live.
Yep.
And so then it's like there's the times where it's like he wants some emotional support, and everyone thinks he's just trying to bore them. Or...
But then there's other times where he isn't. He's also the biggest troll in the show, too, though.
No, the biggest troll in the show is the literal troll.
Touché.
Because Colin Robson tries to feed off of people on comment sections, and then one of the people in the comment section gets Colin Robson riled up, so he goes to meet the guy in person, and it turns out that they're a literal troll.
That's just such a good joke.
Then Colin Robson drains their energy and bores them until the sun rises and they turn to stone. But then they didn't do anything with that joke where the troll grabs his arm as he's turned into stone, but
still,
it was funny.
There's like the thing about what we do in the shadows is, unlike when we talked about Family Guy and its vapid humor, what we do in the shadows bothered to write jokes.
Right.
So The Office didn't write jokes. It just kind of got
the whole references. They just did weird zany things.
Right? And then Parks and Rec didn't really write jokes either. It put in a few, but it mostly didn't really write jokes. A lot of the comedy shows I really love actually have to write the joke. Like, the siren being a trash seagull. Someone actually had to come up with that to make that funny.
Right.
Like, especially the payoff of you weren't actually hexed. I just wanted you to pay attention to me is just so good. Because there's a lot of key moments in that episode. Like, one of my favorite jokes in that one is, so she sets up like the dramatic disappearances for everyone, and then the last was like, you know what? They don't all have to be clever. It just throws them in a hole.
For clarification, he's not talking about the siren. Richard is talking about the guide.
I did jump around a lot.
Who is I had mentioned the Vampire Council arc, which is season 3. And in season 3, Nandor and friends become the new Vampire Council after Guillermo basically slaughters everyone else.
Like a boss.
Like a boss. And so then the guide, who is basically the secretary for the Vampire Council, ends up becoming attached to the group. But they're a clique of vampires, so they're reluctant to let the guide into their group. And so then the guide sets up this practical joke of sorts, telling Nadia that she has a hex placed on her and that she needs to be nice to people in order to remove the hex. And it culminates with the guide inviting them all to basically an abandoned mansion and setting traps for them to capture them because they're all just jerks.
And it was so justified. They are all, in fact, just jerks. I think the best part about that is, like, the entire point of that episode was to just pull the ripcord on the Guillermo arc.
That's true.
They need to distract us completely.
Episode of the season.
Yeah, they need to distract us completely so they could drop in the one plot twist we were waiting for the whole show out of nowhere. Because, yeah, like, I love a good written joke. I think the thing with, to loop back around to Nadia, who we didn't talk about a lot. So I think Nadia...
She's the worst.
Well, that's because she's also the character that makes the things happen. So most things that happen are directly Nadia's fault. Because you need a character who Thedricks and pushes the button for things to happen. So Laszlo doesn't care. So he only gets involved in things when he has like an emotional reason to do such.
Right. And
Nandor is too stuck on himself to actually cause things to happen. So almost every conflict that's happened is Nadia's fault, because you need a character to cause conflict to happen. Because if the show was just Laszlo and Colin Robertson, they'd just be chilling.
That they would be.
They'd be living their best lives. Nandor would still be in the yoga cult, probably.
The yoga cult. I do wonder what sorts of callbacks they're going to make for season 6, because the yoga cult, the siren.
You know, it was such a good episode when they went on national TV and brainwashed everybody. One of my favorite jokes in the show is when they called Nandor the Relentless, Nandor D Relentless in the subtitles.
That was pretty funny.
Like, there is just peak humor in that show to be found. So
yeah, all in all, I think it was a very fun and interesting show to watch. It was a little bit tough to get through the first season just because they dunk on Guillermo so hard, but it pivots in season 2 to the Vampire Slayer arc, and it from there just keeps going.
It hits such a good stride. Like I said, my only complaint I have is if this was the last episode, if it ended where it did, I'd be so unreasonably mad.
Oh?
So, I love the let Guillermo be a vampire to mix up the formula. 4 seasons in, it was fair game. And then it's like, okay, he's going to be a vampire. Have you tried giving him blood? And I really enjoyed where everyone face palms. Like, oh yeah, right, that would make sense. And I was thinking the whole show, it's like, yeah, his vampire fighting powers fighting it off. And Nandor's like, yeah. Well, to quote to my Nandor secretly cares about Guillermo theory, Nandor had already accounted for the Vampire Slayer blood transformation thing. Which means he was still planning to actually transform him.
That's true.
Like, he had this planned out. which is why he's like, well, I would kill you than myself. It's fair. Fair reaction. And after his epiphany after throwing his friend off a bridge, that when you throw a friend off your bridge, he stops being your friend because you threw him off a bridge. Deep, meaningful stuff there. To have, like, Guillermo, though, end up at the end of the show back as a familiar, I'm like, no, kid, don't do that, no.
Well, I mean, is he just going to be a familiar, or is he actually going to be more of a full-on member of the team?
So where I think it's going is I think Nandor is going to turn him into the vampire at the very end, when he's earned it this time.
Right. Also,
Derek did not deserve to die.
Well, he only... I really do wonder about that. They established earlier on that when someone becomes a vampire, they're the same person, but not this. They don't have a soul, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they can come back as ghosts of their human selves.
Yeah.
So for him to die as a vampire and then have his soul put back into the body to come back as a zombie? There's definitely room for something weird to happen there in season 6.
Derek's going to come back. There's going to be, like, something with that. But I will say...
I also hope that there's something with the Colin Robinson being in love with the siren.
You know what I also really enjoyed? Is that... So they explain early on, it's like, wait, if you kill a vampire, it turns everyone back to normal. Well, what happens to us? And it's like, oh yeah, no, you'll just catch you'll just age instantly. I'm like, oh, that's why it was lethal to the original trio. Yeah, that'd be real bad.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's what made that fatal. I get it now. I also really enjoy... So, he murders all those vampires season 2 in the Vampiric Council. Like, just murders the entire Vampiric Council.
Mm.
And then the Baron doesn't learn that till, like, season 5. And it's like, he did what? He opened the door on me? What? He killed how many members of the council? And the Baron's just like, nah, I just wasn't scary anymore.
It's not you guys who have gone soft. It is I who have gone soft. I live in the suburbs of New Jersey.
I also really enjoy that he's called the Baron because his morph suit had no genitals. That just was such a good joke. They don't call me the Baron because I'm nobility. And it's like, that makes so much sense and stupid. How dare it make that much sense? But with that, any closing thoughts before we go into our random question of the week?
No, not really. I mean, the only thing I haven't really talked about is how I liked Trailer Park Boys. I don't know if I liked it more than What We Do in the Shadows, but I definitely put it above Parks and Rec and The Office because the characters... It's not a single antagonist. It's kind of like a dual antagonist situation with Ricky and Julian. And then that creates a very interesting dynamic within the mockumentary style that none of the other three, What We Do in the Shadows, Parks and Rec, or The Office, really have that same dual antagonist feel to them. I'd say that Trailer Park Boys. I mean, I'm a little bit fond of it because it's Canadian, and I'm Canadian. Yeah. But also, as far as mockumentary style shows go, it is actually a pretty interesting watch.
Because it's like, so I pulled up the list of mockumentary series just to kind of like see if there's anything we missed, and it doesn't have What We Do in the Shadows listed because they're bad at their jobs.
Yeah.
But like, so Parks and Rec I got through, but it definitely upticks later. I never got into Abbott Elementary or Modern Family or Reno 911. Like, this is definitely not my genre at all. Because like, Trailer Park Boys is there.
Pretty funny.
But like, they just are missing something. I know they have the Muppets reboot they did recently on here, which might be interesting, honestly, but I digress. What We Do in the Shadows did the mockumentary really well, partly because they acknowledged they were doing it. I think that's the biggest thing, these genres, like, Parks and Rec, for example, was a mockumentary, but never explained why anyone was doing the mockumentary format. Same with The Office. They never bothered to explain why this was being recorded. Or if they did, it happened so infrequently and so long ago that I lost it.
Well, I'm pretty sure Steve Carell's character invites the crew to see how awesome he is, and then they just keep filming them for years.
Which is insane to me. Could you imagine being on that filming crew? Being like, their check's still clearing! They have an episode about how they're going broke, and the film crew's like, maybe if you didn't pay a film crew 24/7.
But yeah, Modern Family. I've seen a few episodes of the first season so far. It's pretty funny. There's an episode where the one father character, he buys his son a bike, and then he tells his son, he's like, hey, your mom thinks you're not responsible, so don't mess this up. And then he's walking down the street, and he sees the bike not locked up. So he takes the bike to teach his son a lesson. But it turns out that it was someone else's bike.
That's amazing.
And then he lets it get stolen, so he has to buy a replacement bike. But then the person who stole that bike from him returns it to him, and so now he has two replacement bikes, and he has to try and explain that to his wife why he has two replacement bikes for a bike that wasn't stolen in the first place.
That is hilarious. On a different note, Brooklyn Nine-Nine would have been a great mockumentary if they did that format, because everyone would have been wearing cameras.
Yeah. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is peak comedy, too, though. Like, Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Arrested Development... Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think, had a more engaging concept for a wider audience. But I think that, compared to Arrested Development, they're both pretty on par for setup and payoff.
So this is going to be my sassy comment. My sassy comment where I dunk on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, even though I've watched the show in its entirety like 8 times. Okay. Brooklyn Nine-Nine had better actors. Arrested Development had better writers. So Brooklyn Nine-Nine, there's entire bits that got carried entirely on the actors' portrayal of those characters. Like there's moments where it's like Captain Holt being Captain Holt was the joke. Where Arrested Development, you didn't really need the actors to deliver them because the jokes were just so good. There's jetpacks and Godzilla.
It looks like a real city if you squint.
Just such a bad joke. Note, I say the following term because I'm quoting a show. When he just goes, yeah, that whole arc was retarded. But yes, our random question. This is a weird one. I feel like we're being trolled here, but can lone wolves be part of a team?
Can lone wolves be part of a team?
Yeah, that's the question. I don't know if I'm missing context or what. That's all I got. I really hope they win their mug for that.
I would say yes, that a lone wolf can be part of a team, because you don't necessarily need every member of the team to be together to perform all their roles in whatever the plan is. So if the lone wolf's objective is to like go in and cause a distraction ahead of time, or sneak around and attack from the rear or something, like the lone wolf can definitely function as a part of a team. But as a character archetype, it's difficult for them to function well in a team.
So, in an animated series from forever ago called Chrome-Shelled Regos? Regos? I don't remember. What happened was, one of the characters was super overpowered and then just kind of like left his overpowered city to be a regular smuck in another city. And he gives a speech where effectively is, okay, listen, since I have to fight for real now, we have to restructure how we do things, because your goal isn't to kill the monsters. Your goal is to set them up so I can kill the monsters because I'm better than you guys. I know that sucks to hear, but that's how we do it. If you want to be part of my team, I can't be running around saving you while killing the monsters. You're going to have to fight differently. And and World Trigger touched on that too a bit, where it's like, why would Yuma not be in charge of the squad? Well, because then he can focus on doing Yuma things. So from anime point of view, sending out your one lone wolf to do their thing while everyone else does their thing is actually great teamwork.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, no, a lone wolf can be a great part of a team when set up correctly, and I've seen a few good examples of it. However, and this is key for playing video games with Panda and his pals, for example, you cannot have a team of 4 lone wolves. You don't all get to be the lone wolf. Lone wolves work if you have like 1 or 2 lone wolves. We go to the Dragon Ball Z Tournament of Power. They had 3 lone wolves. That was pushing it a bit. The entire actual moral they tried to host us at the end of the tournament, which was some bullshit. It's like, Jiren, had you used teamwork, you would have won. Fuck you guys. The first thing you did was split into 3. No. You don't get to give this. Goku, as a character, doesn't get to give the you should believe in teamwork speech.
Goku does not believe in teamwork.
He hired an assassin to kill him before a team event. Like, could you imagine if me and you were entering a doubles tournament, so you slip redacted $30 to shoot you in the leg to see if you can dodge the bullet? And I'm like, I guess I'm entering the tournament alone because you paid someone to shoot you.
Ooh. But if it was a doubles tournament, like Spy Family, the tennis tournament,
Yeah.
oh.
Weirdly enough, Spy Family is a perfect example of lone wolves be part of the team, because both of the foragers are lone wolves doing lone wolf things as a perfect team with 0 communication, because they just enable each other to do their best work. But counterpoint,
Yeah.
I gave this mini rant earlier, and I don't want to go too far over our time, but so I was rewatching JJK because they put it out on something. And I realized that annoying anime trope that you have a 3-person squad, 2 men, 1 woman. The woman either ends up as a healer or dead.
Okay.
And I'm like, thinking about like the Naruto team structure of Sasuke's a lone wolf, and Naruto's also a lone wolf, and they had a lone wolf fight at the end. I'm like, wow, no one learned anything from the show, did they? It's like, yeah, no, the worst thing you can have is a team of 3 lone wolves. That's just not interesting at all. But with that, any closing thoughts before we wrap this thing up about vampires that we kind of talked about, but we mostly just dunked on The Office?
Well, yeah, because The Office deserves to be dunked on. Sorry if you're a fan of The Office. Well, specifically if you're a fan of the US version. I mean,
You probably
really
still
couldn't
like
get
it.
I really couldn't get into the UK version because Ricky Gervais is even more insufferable. But that's just another personal opinion. You should teach their own.
Fair. Where when we look at What We Do in the Shadows, their entire cast are gold. I didn't realize how many things until my friend pointed out that Matt Berry, aka Laszlo, had been in that I just loved. As he's just... Yeah, he's in the IT crowd. He did some voice work in Disenchantment. He's... my brain's drawing blank because you don't notice he's there, but he's hilarious. In Fallout, he was the murder robot that wanted to take someone's bones.
Okay.
But yeah, no, just a thoroughly entertaining show, I found, What We Do in the Shadows. Also, every trigger warning, just all of them.
Oh, yeah. Definitely not for immature audiences.
If you're offended easily, sucks to be you. It
Yeah,
really does, though.
don't
Like,
watch it.
the amount of media content, because I even opened with, if the content and jokes they put as What We Do in the Shadows in a manga or anime or comic series, it would be canceled so fast and there'd be such uproar. Like,
yeah.
Laszlo's hedge garden alone is enough to make people be like, ban this show. It was an hour-long bush joke.
Oh, the werewolves, and they throw the squeeze off the roof.
It was so good. So good. I think the most wild thing is that if you turn on the adult settings, you can watch the show on Disney+.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It is funny.
out of most of the things we've reviewed on the show, it's probably one of my highest reviewed things.
Huh.
Like, it doesn't compete, though, because it goes in a different category, right? Like, it's pure comedy at its finest.
Mm,
Although it's funny because I've heard people refer to it as like British style comedy, even though it's not British.
mm.
I don't know how I feel about that rating. But with that, thank you for tuning in to Richard and Karl present Deep Space and Dragons. There was one character that went to deep space in this episode, so we're clear to go. But there was no dragons yet.
Just as a little quick correction, it's Karl and Richard present Deep Space and Dragons. We're alphabetical now.
You know what's hilarious about that? Is that they can see the graphic. You know this, right? Like, there's a certain level of gaslighting you're trying to do here. And I respect you for it. And if you succeed, all the power to you. As you just like go in and change it on everything you can find. You know what? Just for that, it's just gonna say Karl with a C in the episode description this week.
Ooh, rough.
Just you bit at me, man. We were equals, and you're like, actually, you're not the Elite Four champion. There's one more person you have to fight. I'm like, why? Why are you like this? That's where we're ending on. Is here by Gary Oak.
Hydrate, stay healthy.
And if you can surf on a gold duck, take that opportunity.
Bye.
Bye. But seriously, why was Blue in the Pokemon manga so cool?